Good afternoon, and welcome to K2's Road to Excellence with Excel series, part 12, and our partner, Adagio. This is Alan Salmon speaking, and I'm so glad that so many of you are with me today for our first webinar in July. As usual, my good friend Marilyn Benninger is backing me up today, and she's your go-to person if you have any technical problems or for questions. You are all muted for obvious reasons. You're quite welcome to take notes. However, particularly in the latter part of today, where I'm doing an overview, you're going to want to pay particular attention to my notes and my teaching files, plus the recording of the webinar when you get them in about 10 days. In terms of questions, you ask those through the chat window. And after today's webinar, Marilyn will take all of the questions and send them to myself and Warren from Adagio. We will answer them. And when you receive your package in 10 days, you will get all the questions and all the answers. Now, in addition to that, you will receive a certificate. 4 times today, Marilyn is going to stop Warren and myself and put up a polling question. That is a multiple choice question with 4 or 5 possible answers. And you don't have to get them right, but you do have to select one of the possible answers and click on submit. That timestamps your file, and we know that at that point in time, you are paying attention. If you are tracked at responding to 3 of the 4 polling questions, you will get a certificate for 1 hour of verifiable CPDs. If you don't, you'll get 1 hour of non-verifiable CDs. And now on to my session for today. And it's going to focus on something very different. For those of you like Peter Fritters and Ray Desjardins, who've been with me throughout the year, you will remember that up until today, the focus has been on building a spreadsheet or a workbook. The tools that you use to do that, the way you format them, the way you use formulas, and so on. Today marks a break from that. In today's session, we will be dealing with workbooks that are already complete. And I will be showing you 4 useful tools to understand those workbooks and to do what-if analysis and forecasting. So let's move to the first one. Before we do that, Marilyn, we need to do the first poll.
Absolutely, Alan. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. You should be seeing a blue screen now asking you a question. Which of the following Excel tools do you use when it's useful for you? And you get a few choices there, including Watch Window, Goal Seek, Scenario Manager, Solver, or none of the above. Everyone's wide awake and raring to go today, Alan, so we like to close our polls when we're about 90% participation, and we're just there now. Thanks, everyone. I'm closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to close that poll now and just share those results with you.
And usual, I've got 10% on Solver, and I would love to go one-on-one with you, because when we get to that at the very end, that's a very complicated tool, but it's very easy to work with, assuming you know your metrics. So for those of you who have done the watch window, this will be a reinforcement of it. Now, there's nothing magic about this. It's a simplified income statement. And I like to do simplified examples because it's easier for you to understand. So the first thing to note is this. If I go to this worksheet, you'll notice I'm tracking travel expenses and marketing expenses. And if I change anything here, So for example, I change editing to 6. That will be instantly reflected here. So you're all saying, what's the big deal? Well, let's go to the type of P&Ls that you people use that may cover 2 or 3 pages or more. And of course, the key number that you want there is usually the net income. So I suspect that you all spend a certain amount of time getting to the bottom to find that number. Now, there are ways of dealing with that in terms of the way you view, but I'm going to start by showing you a. So there is a tool in Excel called the watch window that will let me see certain cells on the screen all the time, and it's found under the Formula tab over here, Watch Window. And watch what happens when I click on it. I get this in my header, and you'll notice there are no watches here. So I'm going to add a watch, and I want to watch this. Pretty simple. I click on Add, and notice now when I expand these what I got. So the name of the file is watchwindow.xlsx. The sheet is watch 2. I've given it a named range, which is net Inc. The cell is C10. The value is 33.99, and the formula is equal to C2 minus C8. All right, I'm going to go back here and go to the watch window, and I'm going to change this to 25,000. Now I want you to focus on 33.99, and you notice it changed. So that watch will stay on the screen. If I don't want to see it for some reason, I will click here. But before I do that and move on to the next example, I can set up multiple watches. So I could have a watch, for example, on the total expenses. So think of the value of that when you've got a couple of hundred lines of data, and what you want to see is down the bottom right-hand corner. And the final thing on this one is I can do a watch window from this file to another file. In other words, when I'm setting up the watch, I can say, go to this workbook, which I have open, and I can watch that cell. All right, let's quickly do another, which is right here. Now, this is a file that I worked on with all of you sometime in the past where we were summing multiple sheets. So what we have here is 5 stores. And then you remember when I was doing this that I said I would always add a sheet at the beginning and the end so that I could play games. So let me refresh your memory. If I click on end with my left mouse and drag it over here to there, now it's only showing me those 3. So let's put it back. And now let's do a watch. There we go. So I'm going to click on watch window, and I'm going to drag it down again. I'm going to add a watch, and well, that's not what I want to do. There we go. I want to watch that number there, which is currently 1,490,000, and I click on add. Now understand that if I made any changes to any of these, that number would change. But I'm going to make it easy for you to see because I want to know what that number is if we are only adding the first 3. Now watch that number up there change. watch it change. So for me, particularly working with large spreadsheets, I'm using the watch window a lot, and it's very, very easy to do. Let's move on to the next topic, which happens to be a tool called Goal Seek. And I use this when I'm forecasting, and I'm going to do this very simple example, and then I'm going to do a different one that it is a little more realistic. So here's the name of the game. I know that my gross profit percentage is 29%. I want to know what sales I need to produce a profit of 250,000. Now let me remind you of a basic fact in spreadsheet design, which is we always start in the left-hand corner and we go down and finish down here, and we get usually the answer down here. Here, we're starting here and driving it up. And the classic way to do that, and I did it for many years, was just to put a guess number in sales. Well, that's too much, and make a bunch of changes. Instead of doing that, I'm going to go to data, what if analysis, and go to Goal Seek. Now Excel wants some numbers. What is the set cell? Well, the set cell is that, because I'm going to set it to 250,000. And I'm going to change this. Now, when I click on OK, Excel is going to dump numbers in B4, and it's going to do multiple iterations in a flash of an eye until what's in B4 gives me my target gross profit of 250,000. So let's set Excel to work. And there you go. So the first thing Excel does in the little box, it found a solution. Target value is 250, current value is 250, okay. So if we multiply 862,000 by 0.29, we will get 250,000. I suggest for many of you that will save you a lot of work. All right, let's go to the fourth goal seek. The second goal seek. Now here again, I've done a summary, and all of these numbers, of course, will come from different worksheets. So we're tracking winter, spring, summer, and fall, revenue, profit, and the net. And it's now this time of the year, so I need a forecast for what my revenue will be in the fall. So the CEO has said, I'd like us to reach a net profit of 50,000 by the end of the year. Well, piece of cake in Goal Seek. Go to data, what if analysis, and Goal Seek. So what's our set cell? Well, it's this. And what are we going to set it to? 50,000. And what cell are we going to change? This one. So here we go. Found a solution. So we need 76,600 to do it. And I can tell you right now that I'm using Goal Seek and the scenario manager that I'm going to show you next almost every day, because I'm working on 2 new projects and I'm playing with the variables and the profit and loss. And once in a while, I'll use Goal Seek. The problem with Goal Seek is that I can only vary one variable and I can only have one result. However, if we move on to this file, which I'm going to open up right now, there we go. So again, easy to understand. I'm selling 50, price per unit is 30. My fixed costs are 200. So my variable cost is 30. Based on that, this times that, and so on. I've got a formula in here. B2 times B3 minus B4 minus B5 times B2. Okay, so now let's play what if by changing any or all of these, and I do that by going to Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. Now, in the interest of time, I have already built 3 cases: worst case, realistic, and best case. But I'm going to add another case or another scenario so you can see how easy it is. I merely click on Add, and I give it a name, and I'm going to call it Example Case. And I want to change cells B2 to B3 and B5. Click on OK. Now, what are we going to make B2, which is sale quantity? Well, let's change that to 65. Let's drop this to 25. And let's increase our variable cost by 2. And if I had more variables that I wanted to include, they'd be in that drop box. So I'm going to click on OK. And there's my example case. Now I want you to watch these numbers change here when I click on Show. So it's instantly given me the answer. So let's click on worst case. That's the minus 200. Realistic. And best case. And as I told you, I'm using Scenario Manager on my 2 new projects by changing the variables multiple times. But the problem is what I just did is too much work. I got to do them individually. So notice down here, I have a checkbox called Summary. Click on it. I want a scenario summary. This time I'm not interested in a scenario pivot table. And my results cell is B6, which is correct. Watch the tab line at the bottom because Excel is going to add a new sheet. Oh, that's kind of cool. I get columns. There's the current value. There's the worst case, realistic, best case, and the example case. Pretty cool? I think so. So let's do another one. So in this one of Nancy's daughters is currently trying to buy a townhouse, and I've been playing with some numbers with her. So she has a down payment to meet the requirements. She's going to borrow $400,000, and I've done a calculation so I can play with the interest rate, the term, and of course this generates the response with the equal PMT function, and this reflects the total cost. Okay, so now let's go to Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. And again, I've done a best case, worst case, and almost worst case. So without further ado, I'm going to go and create the summary. And there we go. And there's our new worksheet. So the best case is 3%, 120, worst case that, and so on. Now, most of you are sitting there saying, why would you go to all that trouble when you could do that through any of the bank websites? And you're right. I did this to show you the value of doing scenarios, what if scenarios. So now let's move on to the last thing that I want to share with you, and that is the world of Solver. Now, I use Solver once in a while, when I have variables and restraints. So let's take a look at this example here. So what I've got here is I have 5 warehouses: San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, Dallas, and New York. I have 3 plants in South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arizona. And these are data numbers just so I have something in the cells. Okay. Now, demand, as we go down here and let you see this, we want to ship goods from the 3 plants to 5 regional warehouses. Goods can be shipped from any plant to any warehouse, but it obviously costs more to ship goods over long distance than over short distance. So the challenge is to determine the amounts to ship from each plant to each warehouse at a minimum shipping cost in order to meet the regional demand while not exceeding the plant supplies. So our target cell is B20 because that defines the current shipping costs in the area above. And we're going to change cells G8 to G10. Which are, I said C8 to G10, which are these, which makes sense. Now we've got some constraints. The total ship must be less than or equal to supply at the plant, obvious. The total ship to warehouses must be greater than equal or equal to the demand at the warehouses. And the number to ship must be greater or equal to 0. So, before we can do that, most of you will need to go to File Options and go down here to Add-ins, because the solver solution is an Excel add-in. So there's Excel add-ins. I click on Go, and you'll notice here that I have Solver turned on. Yours won't be. So you'll click there and click on OK. When you do that and go to the Data tab on the far right, notice what we've got: Solver. Now, I've already defined what I want to do. I want to find the answer in B20. I want it to be the minimum, and I'm going to change those cells up above, C8 to D10. Restraints, got to be greater than 0, got to be less than 0, and so on. So the challenge here is to figure out what data you want to change and what restraints you have. And this is one case where I suspect if any of you are going to use this, and 10% of you were or are, you're going to spend most of your time trying to figure out what to put in these boxes. So my example and the text in my little handout and this webinar should give you the tools to be able to do that. But this one you're going to, I suspect, have to work through on your own. So enough said, let's go to solve. And notice these are going to change in here, assuming it finds a solution, which it did. So let's look at it. Solver found a solution. All constraints and optimum conditions are satisfied. Keep the solver solution. Okay. And notice now these numbers have changed. So we're going to ship 180 from San Francisco to Arizona. That makes sense. And none from South Carolina or Tennessee. We're going to ship 10 from Denver to Arizona, 180 from Tennessee, and so on. And the totals are fine, matches the demand. Now, I know I went through this very quickly because I wanted to give you an overview. And I probably have used this maybe half a dozen times in my Excel thing. So what I recommend to you is you file it away, keep the recording, and if you need to use it, go for it. So Marilyn, that wraps up my presentation. So can we do the final poll, please?
Absolutely. So folks, we're going to be giving you the second poll. You should be seeing on your screen a blue box. Which of the following word features do you use? You can choose from styles, tables, track changes, linking to an Excel worksheet, or none of the above. I'll just share with you while you're answering that question that Paula, in the first response to the first question, said, I didn't know any of those things. Well, hopefully, Paula, you've enjoyed Alan's presentation this morning and learned a lot. Thanks for your responses, folks. We're already at 90%, so I'm just going to quickly count you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And let's get those results going. You see those results there, Alan?
Yes, I do. And again, that fits into what I would have expected. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is a lead-in to my next presentation in a couple of weeks. So Marilyn, let's bring Warren in for the Adagio presentation.
My pleasure. So I'm going to just change you to the COM there, Warren.
And let's make sure that we're showing the right screen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Alan, that was fabulous Excel stuff. I know those are things I will try to use. I've got some wonderful spreadsheets I can be working on. Thank you very much for attending. My name is Warren Flett, and I'm a member of SoftTrack Systems. I do some training and some support and some other roles. For those of you who know Andrew Bates, who's our usual speaker in this spot, he's just enjoying some holiday time, so I'll be here today. We've got a lot of things that we're going to cram into 25 minutes or so. I promise we won't be too much on each topic, but what I wanted to do today is talk a little bit about what Adagio is and a bit of a flavor for some of the things about what Adagio is and where it might fit. So for those of you who aren't knowing what Adagio is, what is that? It's accounting software. It's a batch-based system that allows multiple users, multiple currencies. You can pick the modules you want and don't use the ones you don't need. For the core things, for maintaining your customers and your vendors and your financial statements. You can also do specialized information, such as doing job costing or time and billing, and very heavily on reporting, being able to analyze your company data so that you can make good decisions. And who might fit an Adagio site? Typically speaking, Adagio fits someone in the companies in the range of 2 to 100 million, but that's flexible. And we have many different industries and companies that use Adagio across North America and in other places. And there are some certain target markets you see there. Some other interesting things about companies that use Adagio, they typically have a full-time accounting department, which could be just one person, rather than just someone who has to do this chore on Friday afternoon. We don't require IT specialization. You can go into pretty simple networks and workstations so that you don't require any specialization of setup. We think people who use Adagio are interested in their data. They don't just simply input the stuff for the purposes of the government reporting, but they are really interested in being able to analyze their data and make good decisions. And because you wanted to learn about Excel and some of these things, we know that being able to analyze your data is important to you. And often, you will also be working with a consultant support. Typically, there's the small companies rather than the multinational accounting firms that will come alongside and help you optimize your Adagio usage. at the top, I'll just use this as a lead-in into the demonstration, that Adagio is a batch-based system as opposed to a real-time solution. So what that means is you have the opportunity of entering your transactions into a batch, into a group, so that you can verify that the information is correct. You can separate tasks so that you can get things ready, and when you're ready, then you can go ahead and update your accounting for your customers or your vendors or your accounts or your items or so on. Adagio can be keyboard driven. You do not have to use the mouse, so that will allow you to enter your data really fast. Using the mouse will often slow you down, and this is something that will optimize your usage. Once you've entered and updated your accounting, there's a good audit trail, including posting journals, that allows you to track all the things you're doing. And there's also security throughout the batches, so you can ensure that the batch is ready to post and you don't accidentally update before you're ready. You can also require audit reports and also recover or even remove postings in some cases if you've made a mistake when you've updated your accounting. And you can also integrate with other specific industry-specific software so that you can bring in transaction batches, importing either from an Excel spreadsheet or a comma-separated value file. So that's just a very brief introduction to what Adagio is, but it's much more fun to see things rather than. What I'd like to do is just ask a very quick poll question. And I'll just start that. So you should have a screen. For those of you who are in your accounting, just curious to know, what are the things or the specific thing that is the most difficult about your accounting? What's the most frustrating task that you might need to do? And there's a few choices there about reporting or mistakes. It's difficult to do the data entry, or it's easy to make mistakes that way, or there's not very much security, or maybe you're not quite sure what the answer is in that. We're about 2/3 of the way through the voting, so thank you for your responses so far. We're getting close to the 90% threshold, so I'll just give you a couple more moments. Okay, we're at 87, but that's kind of holding firm, 88. So I think what we'll do is we'll do the countdown now from here. You have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll close that poll. And for the people who are in attendance today, it looks like for most of you who recognize that it's the reporting that's the most difficult thing, and there's the other responses, and also many of you aren't quite sure what those things are as far as quick questions. So that's really good to know. Thank you very much. So why don't we take a look at Adagio? This might be brand new for some of you. It might be, for those of you who use Adagio, this might be old hat. Adagio is a batch-based system. I happen to have an invoice batch screen open here, and you can have more than one user entering batches. They can be working on their own batch simultaneously. I'm going to go ahead and edit one of the batches, either by double-clicking on the grid or using the buttons, or using the keyboard too. Within each batch, there will be a collection of invoices or different types of transactions. Perhaps there are credit notes. And we've got a few entered in already. I'm just going to go ahead and edit one that's already been entered, the one here at the bottom. And it's a standard form that you can enter in information. There are finders that are available to look up information for vendors. You can also add your own industry-specific optional fields. And down at the bottom is where you enter in your information for your amounts. You can code them specifically to a specific ledger account, or you may choose to create distribution codes in order to predefine accounts and other things such as taxes. Another cool thing that you can do in Adagio, pardon me, is you can actually attach documents to transactions so that you can view them. If you're using an add-on product called Adagio Doc Store, you'll reveal a paperclip that allow you to either browse to a PDF that's stored on your system, or you may choose to scan a paper document that's attached to your local workstation, or you can drag a PDF from an email, so from an attachment directly into your Adagio accounting. So I happen to be working on document 97153. So I'll just attach that document, and I can either use this as a working space and attach it, and delete the source transaction and move it to the new place where Adagio recognizes it. So now I've attached that document, and you can see some paper glasses, and then there's a document available. From here, we can see that we've got some HST of $1,555. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that distribution, 1555.25, and that calculates the tax. And the rounding will be just off by a couple of cents sometimes when it calculates the source amount. And so now we have our invoice. You can save the changes. So we look at this grid, there might be some other information that you'd like to know about, and without having to edit the transaction or the other record. Everywhere in Adagio, and almost every single grid, you have the opportunity of double-clicking on the column and adding columns that you wish. So maybe you'd like to see the due date as well as the transaction date. So you have a list of all the available fields that you can choose to add to a grid. Double-click, and now the due date's there. You can just move the columns around a little bit as necessary. So that's good. So I'm just going ahead and close this batch. Once you are ready to update your vendors, in this case, for those transactions, you might want to ensure that the batch is ready to post. So at the current time, I have one that is ready and another one I'm still working on. I'm going to go ahead and post batch number 9. I can choose to back up the data immediately before posting, just in case something goes wrong. Sometimes that happens with computers. Or I can just go ahead and post only. And then now I have an audit trail that shows all of those transactions and the accounting that occurred, and a summary of the GL transactions across all of those invoices. So that's interesting for your audit. So now we've generated some GL activity. Let's go into Adagio Ledger. And I can launch that just from a button that's available on a toolbar. And I've just posted those information from payables, and Ledger recognizes that that's available. So I'm going to go ahead and retrieve that. There's some transactions I can choose to retrieve, and I can do it by date or assign a particular period. And so I've created a new batch. You can see that up above here, 677. Let's just investigate what we've got here. We've got our 4 invoices. And notice that that document that we attached in payables has flowed through the ledger. I can view the transaction PDF directly from the ledger as well as the payables. This flows all the way through Adagio. I could do some analysis. I can print a batch listing, pardon me. And then when I'm ready to post that, I can identify that and post this to update my accounting. Again, there's audit trails, we can show you that. Reporting is very important in Adagio, so you can see the information and all the accounts that got updated for your ledger accounting. There's lots of different ways that you can do reporting in Adagio. We've seen a couple of standard reports. There's also a very tight integration with Excel. You'll see that in many places in Adagio, you'll see this little green X that shows an Excel icon. Wherever you see that button, you can click that, and the contents of the grid will be exported to Excel. Now, if the information that you want to export to Excel is not in the grid, remember, you can double click and you can add the information that you wish using the column editor. Well, this is somewhat interesting. Let me show you a different grid, the View Transactions grid. And I'll edit the first account, which is the cash account. That would tend to have a lot of transactions. You can see that in Adagio, pardon me, that there's lots of transactions here. Let's say that you'd like to do some analysis on this information. I could use the column editor to add the columns that I want. And you can see this grid also has the Excel Direct button. So if I go ahead and click that, what that will do is that will launch Excel, and that will send out all of those rows into a table formatted spreadsheet in Excel. Then you have the opportunity here to do analysis as required in the same way that in anything that you do with a table. You can do filtering, you can do sorting, all those sorts of things. We won't worry about saving this for now. Just a moment ago, we posted a couple of batches. If we wanted to do some analysis, say in that expense account that we just posted to, 6850, 250. You'll see here that those posted transactions, you can do the Excel Direct, and there's that view button again that you can see the PDF. There's also a number of places where you can do reporting directly to Excel. You might want to analyze your posted transactions for many accounts. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of the reports. There's a detail listing. And there's something that you can enable in the company profile setup that allows you to send this report to Excel directly, rather than printing it to paper or to a PDF. There are various reports specifically set up in order to use this. Not every report has this capability. There are some options that you can set up when generating a report and sending it to Excel. You can specify the location that you're going to save the file, and you can give it a customized name, so you don't have to keep renaming it every time. You can also include codes, such as a fiscal period, or a user ID, or a date. There's many different codes that you can automatically have get translated into the file name that gets generated. And whether, if it already exists, whether you append it with the date and time, or just overwrite it. So if we were to generate this file to Excel, you can see you don't have to change the destination, but just to show you what the results will be before you click the button. It will save in this folder a file name. So you can see the detail listing was for fiscal year 2008, period 10. And I happen to have it just set up for just the expense accounts, not the entire chart of accounts. So when I go ahead and click the Excel Direct button, so we have our detail listing in a table format in Excel, so that you have the opportunity of doing analysis. Maybe you want to pick just a particular account. Very simple. So you can use the power of Excel in order to do analysis on your data in a very easy way. Let's close that. So there are a few different reports in Adagio Ledger that support that. And across Adagio, there are transaction reports such as open payables or age trial balance and receivables that support that Excel Direct printing. So we think that's pretty cool. Another power in Adagio is the financial reporting. So let me go ahead and open the financial reporter here. And I'll do a blank sheet. The financial reporter is very much like a spreadsheet similar to Excel. It has many of the same formulas that you can do in Excel, not some of the fancy ones that Alan's been showing you today. But it gives you the opportunity of entering in your financial statements using formulas to read your accounting data. You're not required to hard code and manually key in numbers. The computer does that for you. I'm just going to open up a simple income statement, and you can have as many financial statements saved as you wish. So here's a very simple statement that shows a few columns, current month and year to date, some budgets as well, same periods last year for comparatives. And this information, if we take a look up at the toolbar here in the top left-hand corner, is for fiscal period 10 and year 2008. That's the date that I logged into the sample data. Now, if I wanted to see that for last month, if I wanted to reprint, it's not a matter of having to rekey any numbers. I can just simply select the fiscal period from the toolbar, and then all the numbers automatically update. Or I can even do that for a prior fiscal year if I wanted to. So all the numbers are maintained in the Adagio ledger history, and those numbers can be brought forward. You can see this as a individual accounts, or you can even collapse this sheet in order to show it as a summary. So you can toggle back and forth between the summary view or a detailed view that rereads your chart of accounts and all the numbers on the fly. And for accounts that you don't want to see zeros, I can turn on a zero suppress and hide all of those accounts that don't have any activity. And when you send that, it will generate a financial statement with one or more pages, either to paper or to PDF, or you can also email these as an attachment if you wish. So that's pretty cool. In the financial reporter, not only can you generate these statements, but you can also do some analysis directly from here. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that expense account that we just posted to, $68.50, our travel expenses. And if I wanted to, I can just double click on the cell, and that will bring down a drill down screen that will show me that for my account, $68.50, it will break down each of the different departments that I've posted to for the specific period. And if I realize I actually really wanted a different period, I can change that on the fly. We posted to period 250 a little bit earlier in the session. So let me just go ahead and double click that anywhere on the row. And now we can see that breakdown to that particular account for each of the fiscal periods for that. I can also double click on any specific fiscal period for this account and for this sub department. And I can view all the transactions that have been posted to that account for that period. And if I was a little more curious about one particular transaction, I can double click on that. I can get all the way down to the balance GL entry to see all the different accounts, whether the expenses or revenue, taxes, control accounts, bank accounts, whatever it is that might have been updated by this particular transaction posting from Adagio Ledger. And I can go back if I need to go back. And remember that attachment that we did way back in Adagio Payables? Well, it's possible to view the PDF directly from here. Let me just do a different transaction. It's got a few more, 66.75, there it is right there. So this has got a few different document links as well. Something else that you can do as far as analysis goes in the financial reporters, once you get to one of these drill down screens, there also is an Excel Direct button. And just like with the grids, I can click that and open up a spreadsheet so I can do some analysis on that particular detail. But something that's also pretty cool is you noticed that the document link column is active. So I can go ahead and click on one of these. Oops, sorry, double click. Oh, my viewer is closed. And it actually generates a transaction grouping. So you can take that document that was created, and all the PDFs are also organized in a subfolder so that if you wanted to send this as a package to an auditor or to just someone in the company that says, I want to see all the PDF documents in addition to the information regarding the account that was posted to in this period. So you can zip all this up as a package to someone else with a spreadsheet and all of the associated PDF documents. So I think that's pretty cool. So the financial reporter is a very important tool not only for generating reports, but you can also do analysis on some of your accounting. So let's go ahead and close this. Another way that you might want to do analysis on your accounting data to make decisions is by using an inquiry tool in Adagio called Adagio Grid View. I'm going to load a simple workspace that you can attach from payables. I'll do it. Inquiries. It'll attach, if you use Adagio Grid View, you can attach inquiries that you create, customize directly off the menu. I'm just going to pick a simple vendor list. And this will launch a program that you can generate a window that shows information that's interesting to you, and you can customize it, filter records, calculate columns, and so on. So I've got a very simple vendor list already created that shows what their balance outstanding is, the last time that there was an invoice, and the last time there was a payment. Well, that's okay. I'm going to do very quickly, create a new one for you just to show how easy it is to do an inquiry, and we'll do it to a transactions window. So I'll just say File New. And I want to do a vendor transactions inquiry. So the vendor transactions are stored in Adagio Payables. And I want the transactions table. Of course, there's many other types of information that you can choose to report on. And now I get to pick and choose what columns I want. Well, I certainly want the vendor and the transaction type and the document number and the date, maybe a description, the original amount, the amount payable, and down at the very bottom, you'll be seeing the document link that we just saw earlier. I can come back and add more fields if I want to later on if I happen to forget one. I can choose to add a filter. I'll do that in just a moment, but if you have a very large database, you might want to add a filter just so it doesn't load a million records right away. So now I've got a list of transactions. I'm just going to move the window so it's just nicely spaced here. Oops, there we go. So there's a list in sample data of all of the transactions. Once you've created an inquiry that you like, I can save it. Transaction list for vendors. You can make the name as nice as you would like. And so now I can use that. Instead of maybe not wanting to show all of the transactions, maybe I want to show just a few. So I'm going to go ahead and create a filter. Sorry, edit, filter, so I show just particular records of interest. So let's say I want to see only those that are larger than $10,000. Oops, more than $10,000. So the original invoice amount is greater than 10,000. That's a nice simple one. So now I can select that named filter from a drop-down, and now only original amounts of more than $10,000. I can even sort by that field if I double-click on the column. Maybe I only want to see the large invoices for a particular vendor. So what I can do is I can right-click from a cell and link to my transaction list. So now this is a linkable table. So if I double click on a cell, now I only see the particular list of vendors who have invoices larger than $10,000. And there's that document link so I can see the transactions from an inquiry. So there's lots of different ways in Adagio that you can analyze your data. I'm going to go ahead and open up the second poll question for mine, which is the last one. And for you, what are your preferred ways to analyze your data? The choices I'm giving you that you can choose as many as you want is Excel, Crystal reports, inquiries that are defined within the program, or maybe use ODBC or some sort of custom program to read your data. So looks like there's a good response in that. We're almost at 80% already. So I'm just gonna let that tick up closer to 90 before I close the poll. See the results are pretty much as expected, but I How we're doing for time? Good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, since we're almost at a minute in and it's kind of stuck at 85%, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, close. So for the people in attendance today, no surprise, almost every one of you like using Excel, and some of you also like using program inquiries, and there's a few Crystal Reports users, and 3% of you are power users with ODBC. Thank you for that. The last thing I want to show on my list of topics is that not only can you generate reports, but sometimes you'll have to generate documents. Perhaps you need to send a statement or an invoice to a customer, or you might need to send a payment remittance advice to a vendor. Adagio has a very simple forms designer that I just want to very briefly show you in the minute or two that I have left. And I'm just going to go ahead and open in Adagio Receivables a statement, which is one of the more simpler types of forms that you can generate. A document specification, such as an invoice or a remittance advice or a check or a statement, typically will be a very simple layout where you can generate sections like a page header and a page footer, or you can do different detail types of footers, first page or second page, and you can just drag around information that you want. So if you want to change the information of the logo, it's just a matter of using the mouse to drag it around. Same thing is for the field objects. I can use that and drag it so that it's not a matter of defining specific columns or formulas. It's just drag and drop. You can specify different copies so that you can create, for example, the copy that goes to your customer and the copy that stays for the office. And you can put different information on each. The information can be found from a field list. Oops, let's move that up. So you might have information about the customer or the vendor or the account or whatever type of transaction form you're doing. Customer address, information about the invoice or details and so on. And it's just a matter of dragging the code on. You can also view particular copies. I happen to have a 2-copy form. And if we take a look at the properties of this label, for example, it could be labels or it could be database field information. You can specify what copy this particular information will print on. In this one, it's not printing on copy 1, just copy 2. So I'm going to go ahead and show you if I view copy 1, it's gone, and view copy 2, it's there. And the great thing about viewing a particular copy is if I were to take customer information and drag a field such as the last statement date onto the form and right click and look at the properties, because I was only viewing copy 2, it will only print the information on copy 2. Similarly, for the balance of the last statement, I can just simply drag the field on, organize the fields, and so on. So using the specification designer is really quite simple. And I see we're at our time. I want to thank you for being here and attending, and I hope that this was a useful overview of Adagio, and that was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Warren. I applaud your enthusiasm and share it for accounting. I think I counted, that was pretty cool, 3 times. So thanks for that. Always great to see the latest in accounting software. Alan, are you there to wrap us up?
I certainly am. Well, thank you, Warren, for that excellent presentation, and thank you all for attending. As usual, there will be a short survey when you exit from the program, and a reminder that within 10 days you will get the recording, my teaching notes, my teaching files, answers to all the questions, and your certificate. So I hope to see you in 2 weeks for our next mini webinar. It's a wrap.